Thank you for tuning in to ICT on PNC, a podcast covering issues that impact the Texas insurance industry. The Insurance Council of Texas is a nonprofit trade association serving the property and casualty insurance industry. We're proud to be the largest state-based insurance trade association in North America. Welcome to ICT on PNC.
Well, welcome to another ICT podcast. I'm Albert Betts, Executive Director of the Insurance Council of Texas. Today, we're going to have a wonderful and engaging conversation with Jason Meza, who is the Regional Director of the Better Business Bureau. Jason works out of the San Antonio office or home nowadays. And so, Jason, thank you so much for joining me.
Much appreciated. Thank you guys for having us.
We're glad to have you, and I think it's a good time to talk about what the Better Business Bureau does, how it services consumers, and then particularly given our recent big giant winter storm, talk about what you have seen and how y'all have tried to assist consumers as best you can. And so I'm not going to completely recap, but I'm sure everybody still remembers a little over 2 months ago almost. We were 20 degrees or less for multiple days. The outcome of that storm has been billions of dollars in losses, hundreds of thousands of claims, and a lot of questions from consumers as they have, probably for the first time for many people, had to deal with frozen, broken water pipes and other damages caused by snow and ice and sub-freezing temperatures. So with that, Jason, I'm going to kind of get into a conversation with you, pick your brain, figure out how y'all are helping consumers, but also how the insurance industry might be able to help educate and help consumers deal with events like this. Texas, this winter storm has brought a lot to our attention, but Texas is not unique in having a lot of disasters throughout the year. Hailstorms, I think we're under a hailstorm watch in parts of Texas right now, tornadoes, floods, hurricanes. The sad joke is the only thing we're missing is earthquakes, and we actually have some of those occasionally.
That's correct.
But after these large events that can cover cities or counties, most recently the entire state, how do y'all fit into helping consumers, and what do you hear from consumers after these type of large weather events?
Yeah, thanks again, Albert, for having us and letting us explore what we're going into. I can tell you Better Business Bureau is part of the conversation when it involves repairs, when it involves any kind of fraud, con artists, scams, whatever the case is, we're somewhere in that conversation. We have a seat at the table, the dinner table, if you will, about who to call or reach out to when people want to complain. They can talk to family and friends and talk to referrals, but the BBB, I can tell you what we are not. We are not an enforcement agency, meaning we don't go and arrest people. We don't go, and put people in handcuffs, so to say. But we do share information. We are a 501c6 nonprofit organization. What does that mean? We are not related with the government. We are not tied into federal dollars. We are not for profit. So we operate independently. We operate without bias, and it's very incumbent to tell everybody that online, it's such a different world, Albert, nowadays. Everything it moves at the speed of light. At the same time, information goes so quickly back and forth. We're trying to play catch up ourselves many times. If we encounter a homeowner with a situation where they're dealing with contractors or insurance companies, and then on the other side of that, as consumers ourselves, we report what we see. We survive on consumer tips. So definitely when February rolled around with the unprecedented weather storm, we saw quite a bit of handyman tactics. A lot of people trying to just keep the water on, trying to keep the power on. So we saw a lot of people helping generously each other. Very little instances of actual fraud reported up this direction, but we can say that it probably did happen, just not reported. But traditionally, Texans are very, very generous consumers and helpers. If we see our friend in need, we will help. So it was an emergency situation for everybody. But I will tell you again that it's just we survive on what the consumers tell us, and then we investigate appropriately.
Jason, let me ask, how do consumers find out about the Better Business Bureau?
Well, for several years, people thought, well, they're going to stick their finger in your nose. I'm going to call the BBB on you for whatever reason. They want to complain to a third-party group to help them solve a problem. or maybe they got gypped at a cash register somewhere, or they just don't trust the person they're doing business with. They look for us at any point online. That's where everything starts, at bbb.org. There are over 100 independent Better Business Bureaus across the country. What does that mean? Well, this one in Texas serves 105 counties, everywhere from Fort Worth to Corpus Christi, Midland, Laredo, and here in San Antonio and Austin. So we have a very, very huge geographic region to serve. But out of the other 100 plus councils or bureaus in the country, we all must work together systematically. So we have to share files. If we know something, the system has to know right away, because again, fraud crosses multiple state lines in seconds. So people look for us, they seek us out. We do have an office. We do have several regional offices to people can go to visit and to help arbitrate, to file complaints, whatever the case is. But we are in our communities on the foot level as well. We are out doing events. We are trying to help people, remind them we're here, and just remind them that they can call us.
That's great. Yeah, I know personally I've seen a lot of Better Business Bureau ads and spokespersons on the news, particularly after the storm, advising consumers. But you mentioned earlier, primary areas where you help is with repair and fraud. Let's talk about fraud for a bit. And I think you referenced you haven't, BBB has not received a lot of fraud complaints or inquiries after this storm. And I can tell you from the industry's perspective, a similar trend, not a lot of fraud complaints, at least so far. But how has this storm, or has this storm been different than any other large weather event in this state in terms of the types of frauds you've heard about, or the frequency with which you hear that there's some consumer concern that they have been in some way ripped off?
Yeah, besides the obvious point that we haven't seen the weather related event for so long. The eyes were opened a lot when we went down the reports and started figuring out who is in the state doing business, who is licensed to do plumbing, and then the state relaxed the regulations for out of state plumbers to come in and assist. So then we just had to the basketball goal kept moving on us. So they moved it again, and we had to relax some things here. A lot of businesses stepping up to get their profiles in place. That way, when they're out helping and soliciting, they won't be questioned. Many times, again, people turn to YouTube for the small handyman projects, stopping the leaks, repairing a quick pipe. They're learning about the materials used, like the copper, the fittings, all that, and that's great. But then the larger projects and the measures people took to reach out to contractors, get on the schedule if they could, very busy contractors to this day, find out who they are, who they operate with. That was what we saw a lot of in the days following, and we're talking the third week of February into the March timeframe last month. I did see personally a lot of reviews come in saying, we're having trouble getting repairs done. Yes, we have, cases out. We did reach out and we have our policy in place. We did have an adjuster, reach out, but the work was not getting done as quickly. So a lot of that came into play. It's to be expected. We had not experienced this in February. We were not prepared. I mean, honestly, a lot of people weren't. So it opened our eyes a lot more to say, we need to play defense. We need to stay ahead of the ball. In the event this happens again in February with freezing weather in Texas, and the event that we get utilities, backed into a corner like we did, we need to be really ready. And to speak of that, we were actually preparing to sit at the table with our energy company, our power companies that week. Albert, we were sitting in a conference room with CPS Energy out of San Antonio to talk about, weather-related disruptions, solar power, contractors that are running around offering solar panels for houses. They're not supposed to be, or not legit. We were actually already talking at this level about things that could happen, and then this happened. So we had to reel it back and say, we'll revisit this at a later time, because obviously they had a lot bigger things on their plate. So yes, we are in that conversation somehow, but consumers know that they can come to us for resources. We can point them in the right direction if they see something.
That's great. And it's funny you mentioned this is completely off topic, the solar panel solicitors, because we get them all the time, and I've wondered about how legal that is. So yeah, keep that up once we get past this storm and help resolve that issue for us. But so it seems like your role is, I won't say facilitating, but at least it attempts to help consumers. I think you just used the phrase, get pointed in the right direction. Without the enforcement authority, y'all are there to help, it sounds like educate, direct, put consumers in touch with whichever party they may need to go to try to get their issues resolved. Is that kind of fair and accurate?
More than fair. That's correct. We've got a puzzle to solve, and we have pieces that our consumers know about: names, emails, faces, whatever the case is. And if we can get those pieces to come together, we can have a pretty good puzzle picture and share that with our law enforcement partners, AG's office, whoever needs to know, and then say, we have a case here. We need to get a profile opened.
Well, as you mentioned, luckily, for different reasons, sitting at the table with the power companies when this hit, as we are approaching hurricane season, what steps does the Better Business Bureau take to prepare and deal with what typically in Texas is a late July, August, or September event? But tell me how y'all prepare and what you typically see during the hurricane season.
Sure. I mean, 2017 was, big for everybody. It was monumental with Hurricane Harvey and the Gulf Coast. So our coastal bend residents, we know storms are coming. With hurricanes, we know there's at least a 5-day, 10-day window if we know what disturbances are heading our direction. So we're boots in the ground, heading to media, really trying to tell people, listen, the time is now. As much as I tell my family to read the fine print, it's hard to go through a 31-page document if you're just renewing your cell phone policy. So that's a lot of information. You click accept or yes, I read it all. So terms and conditions really, really apply when you have to read the fine print. We tell our consumers days in advance, if not now, read those insurance policies, get them out. It's not light reading, but you need to know what exclusions are sitting there, what your policy, your deductibles are, what everything that it entails. It's all risk management, Albert. It's all risk mitigation. If you own a business, you manage risk every day. Just figuring out where that lies with your home, with your personal belongings, what needs to be covered. Then you got wind, flood, all different types of coverages. So really doing the homework before the storm hits, and that's hard to do. It's hard to get people to motivate them to get to a place where they're comfortable sitting down, looking at policies, reading them, talking to their agents. But we're always pushing in that direction days in advance. Obviously, on the back end of that, we're getting the calls for the contractors, for people that need to find reliable help to get repairs done. So on both directions, we're always trying to get consumer outreach. We're trying to get in the conversation. We do have great media relationships, as does all of our agencies. So we're always in the conversation somewhere.
Well, that's great to hear. I know a big part of our push is preparation. Um, you're exactly right. The idea of sitting down and reading an insurance policy until you need that policy is not probably high on your list of what am I going to do here this evening. So I appreciate the effort to try to get people educated. Do you ever get calls beyond who do I go to for repairs? Do consumers reach out to you if they just have a concern about their insurance company or how their claim is being handled, which admittedly happens from time to time?
Yeah, all the time. We see a range of issues, and that could go anywhere from just basic customer service to what are the current regulations? What's the law telling us? And of course, TDI and TWIA and other partners are always keeping us informed about what's the latest movements with legislation. But yes, we get the calls first. Usually, people will not know to go that direction to a TDI or to TWIA or to a state or a government or federal agency. They'll come to BBB. And that's where we need to be on our toes saying, listen, this is what we heard, this is what we know. Here's the official websites. Don't take information in, just what you read online. It could be, is the source verified? So we're always trying to play the home game ourselves, where we want to stay connected with resources. We point people in the direction. If they come to us, we need to know where to push out information. So yes, anything from a tip to I think my agent is using, some kind of back end operation. I don't know how they're preparing my insurance, but I have questions. And so that's where we also connect them with the correct resources. So a range of issues, Albert. We get them all. We get all the questions all day long.
Oh, great. And you mentioned contractors as well. And I understand you get a lot of those calls. What tips do you give consumers, let's say after an insurance loss, for how to select a contractor or things or precautions they should take to make sure they don't become a victim of fraud?
Sure. We go in two directions when we get these questions or these pitches. We say, what are the red flags first? What are the warning signs you need to know about before you even get these calls or visits? And then, yes, what are the tips to avoid getting into a situation where you've already signed a contract, you already paid a deposit? Before you get there, we back to step one. We always tell the red flags, the warning signs that you're probably dealing with somebody that's either not licensed to do the work or simply in plain terms a scammer, somebody that's just going to take money and run. Again, know the warning signs. If they're asking for money up front, usually that's the kind your ears should go up at that point, thinking, well, how much you're going to need for deposit? I'll need 50% up front, or I'll need some money up front. Usually, a good estimate, a good bid will not include that. It's going to be a free estimate or a free guidance to tell them this is what we're going to charge you, but never to come out like a trip fee, never something where it's exorbitant, where they're asking for a lot of money out the door. Another thing is we call them storm chasers, affectionately in the industry. They're not the people that chase tornadoes. They're the people that chase the storms. They know the damage path. They know where hail fell the last night. They know what damage has been done. They simply wake up the next morning. They start knocking on doors. They park a vehicle in the neighborhood and just case the neighborhood and figure out which homes are vulnerable to us accepting a bid. Obviously, I'm not going to go up on my roof and check for damage. I'm, getting up there where I have vertigo, and I'm not going to do my own inspection. So I'm going to trust somebody to do that and give me a fair, honest, accurate picture of what's going on. A lot of bad actors are moving, as you know, offer an inspection for free. They go up on the roof, take some pictures, make some damage, and pose that as a need to hire them. So again, a lot of unethical contractors, we won't call them, I'll just call them storm chasers, are in the neighborhoods, usually days or hours after storms. We try to tell people, watch out for door-to-door solicitations. Legit companies are really busy nowadays. They're not going to go door-to-door drumming up business. If they are, they might be using a third party to do so. And even then we get into a situation where, is this group legitimate representing the company? Are they, authorized to book on your behalf if you're a contractor? A lot of different things, but the warning signs are there. And again, look up the reviews, do your research and investigate before you even sign on the dotted line. Don't sign anything, offer any money before you find out who they really are. And on the back end, again, if money goes out the door, you're probably backed into a situation where you're not sure if they're going to show up again. Right now in Texas, it's unique, or across the country, with material shortage, with supply issues, with basic trying to get things done with work, hiring workers. So a lot of this causes delays. A lot of this is probably up in the air. You're not going to get the project done when you want, as quick as you want. You're going to run into delays. So we're constantly fighting that battle. But on top of that, yeah, we are seeing the contractors stepping up their game as always. We're just trying to stay one step ahead.
Well, great. And you raised a point that we've gotten questions about in the industry, which is that consumer who pays up front, gives the money to whoever came by and solicited, and that contractor disappears, takes off with the money. What does the consumer do? Do y'all encounter that situation? I'm assuming you do. And how do you advise that consumer on their remedies? Because they have now lost their money. They probably don't have the repairs. And what advice do you give them as their potential avenues for recovery?
And I'm going to pattern the local police department efforts when they say, if you see something, say something situation. Don't let this get swept under the rug. It's good to share with friends and family, social media, and others what happened, but you need to report it up. Really let others know. If it's just the BBB, again, we will report it up. But it is fraud. It is money loss. So if you offered cash money, you really need to report that as fraud happening in the neighborhood. Let contact law enforcement. Start there. Let us know. Let others know. I mean, if you're talking about review companies, you're doing great. But again, letting BBB know what's happening, what kind of bad actors are in our neighborhoods, we can then put a pretty good picture in place saying, listen, this is a hot place. We know. And in advance, go to our partners, go to our agencies, go to the media, and prepare ourselves to do a PR pitch and say, this is what we know is happening. Look out. Homeowners, be on the lookout. Be aware of what's going on. But for folks who have already, again, been backed into a situation where they don't know if they're going to get repairs, or if they've given money, just know that, again, there are ways to report this, but we want you to say something for sure. Don't just let this go unattended. We always tell people as well, Albert, to start with their insurance company. I mean, that's the best place to start. You need to start with your insurance agent. Make that call first before anything happens, before anything moves. You've got a policy sitting there you probably haven't read. We hope you did, but that will cover, and have the adjuster, have the person that's on the line know that you're going to be starting the process of looking for repairs. They might have recommendations. They might have people in their corner they know they've worked with in the past. Little things like this can open the door to staying safe in advance of losing money or losing that project.
Right. That's really good feedback and good information. I'm glad to hear y'all are doing that. You touched on something else I always wonder about. We know different areas of the state have different types of fraud that frequent those areas. As you look at Texas, are there certain groups that fraudsters, criminals target? Are there certain regions they target, or is it just opportunity come and they take it?
I'll tell you I've been asked this question so many times about who's vulnerable. We automatically point to our senior consumers, our older age groups who are less less articulate with technology. But I'm going to point the opposite direction. We have seen a huge spike in our younger consumers, 21 to 34. Pre-homeowners getting their first loans, entering the job market. These are the people who are actually getting attacked more frequently because of the technology, because of the power they have in their hand with cell phones, with social media. They're getting more threats on them. So, in other words, yes, senior consumers are highly vulnerable to this day, and they will be. But our millennial group, those who grew up with the technology, are getting attacks more frequently. There's more avenues to get to them. So I'm going to just example Facebook Messenger. We have so many perpetrators posing as legitimate profiles, saying you need to click here. I'm your friend. Remember, we're friends on Facebook, so trust me. So they've broken down that barrier with trust, and now our younger people are coming to us saying, "What did I just do? I trust technology so much with cash apps." With Bitcoin, all this new technology has opened up the doors wide open for fraud. And con artists know this, and they're just mixing the confusion of the pandemic. They're confusing, our students about loan options, about forgiveness, forbearance. Every little avenue they take, they're poking holes at our younger consumers and just breaking down that trust barrier. So yes, we see a highly, highly vulnerable or charged up younger market that are getting attacked with, phishing scams and just attempts on their IDs. It's everybody though. It's everybody.
Yeah, in fact, I won't bore you with the details, but I had a child who on their laptop once got a message, which I know once they described it to me, I was like, how in the world would you click on that? Uh, but, but
You'd be
yeah,
surprised.
I know. Once he explained, well, it said I need to do something with my Microsoft, and he did it. And short version is his bank account was emptied and his laptop was locked. So, yeah, I was shocked to find out that young people are as vulnerable as anybody else, under the misconception that they would be wiser and smarter because they've been on technology longer, or at least more accustomed to it. But no, that's very good to hear. Is there any difference in the regions of the state? Obviously, with the weather varying from region to region, there may be different scams that happen due to damage. But can you tell if there's any particular crime or any particular fraud that permeates North Texas as compared to the Valley or the El Paso region or the Panhandle, or is it
I,
just uniform across the state?
sure. Texas itself is such a different animal. In other words, we enjoy the luxuries of usually great climate, but our proximity to the border also plays a big factor in a lot of attempts to undermine our trust as well. Meaning, what do I mean? Well, I mean that a lot of crime goes back and forth across the border. So there's always that fear. The con artists play on our fear. They use a fear tactic, saying, "Listen, there's the typical grandparent scam where your niece or your son or your grandson is locked away in Mexico, and we need money now." It's like a
Mm.
ransom attempt. So there, we see that a lot across the entire state. Just fraud itself, it moves in so many different directions. So the Metroplex is not much different than San Antonio, Houston, not much different than Lubbock. A lot of rural spaces give us a lot of place to play. In other words, a lot of place to investigate and run these kinds of, counter operations or intelligence to, sit with groups and hear what they have to tell us. Anywhere from, West Texas on down to South Texas. I think it's the same. Fraud doesn't know any different barrier. They kind of use a tactic where it's a spray and pray approach. We're going to send out 1,000 attempts. We come back. If we're successful 1% of the time, a cyber criminal has done their work for the day. It's sad to hear, but it just happens a lot.
Jason, I'm going to ask you my last question. What can we in the insurance industry do to work with Better Business Bureau, or what can we do to help educate consumers about fraud and how to not become a victim after you've already suffered a loss?
Yeah, I was sitting with a great local insurance owner, broker owner last week about this, and he asked pretty much the same question. How do we stay above the curveball? How do we help our clients and you, the Better Business Bureau, in letting people know that there shouldn't be a genuine fear in, researching insurance policies, learning about it, what exclusions are, and what coverages are and deductibles. So I think that's the main thing we urge our friends in business to do, is to kind of bring the drape down, let everybody see the wizard, know and take a deep dive into really educating, really pointing to our consumers, saying this is what this is how this works, this is how your policy moves, and just be open and transparent. I cannot stress that enough. We see so many transparency issues day to day to day, just not up front. The FTC is huge on making sure you put disclaimers. If you're doing insurance renewals, you have to put, what you're changing in the year. Really stay up front and be transparent in everything you do. You'll benefit in the long run because your consumers will trust you. They'll know they can rely on you, and they can pick up the phone and make the calls just for education purposes. But yes, we do want our businesses and insurance companies to remind themselves and their clients to, this is what this does. Keep ourselves educated. Don't be afraid of what insurance is. We all need it at one point or another, and what level at another. We all need it. And I think it's just bringing that drape down and just really showing our consumers that it's a beautiful thing, but this is how it works.
Jason, I couldn't agree with you more. Well, thank you, sir. This has been very informative, I think very useful, and keep up the good work of the Better Business Bureau. I know there's a lot of consumers out there that depend on y'all and other groups to help make sure they get the best out of their transactions with insurance and other products. So thank you so much for participating. I'm sure our members and other groups will enjoy listening to today. And as always, we stand ready to work with y'all to protect Texans. So thank you again, Jason. I appreciate it so much.
Likewise, a virtual handshake to yourself, for the council, and everybody that does great work in the industry here in Texas. Appreciate you.
Thank you, man. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this edition of ICT on PNC. Find us online at insurancecouncil.org for more information about our organization or about the property and casualty insurance industry in Texas.